Are you ready for some criticisms of the Warcraft 3 system? What are the developers up to? What are they doing? Should the pro players be having so much insights and essentially hearsay and thoughts going into the PTR that makes it go through to live? Well, do you even remember that the Warcraft 3 still has a PTR? It says Saulapeman. He's got his YouTube channel here. Check him out. It'll be linked in the video description below. His analysis and suggestions. So about 30 minutes. Got him on slight speed here, and I'm going to pipe in when I feel necessary. So let's get started.
Hello, Warcraft 3 people. Do you even remember that we have PTR going on in Warcraft 3? So Blizzard suggested a small changes, mostly addressing Dark Ranger, but it was when Grabby was playing a lot of Warcraft 3 daily, and Grabby gave out some feedback, and some other content creators went in with the feedback, and Blizzard addressed that. Afterwards, we had, Christmas and the New Year, so there was a very, very slow action in Warcraft 3. Now Grab is playing World of Warcraft, and it's a little bit, nobody's talking about the PTR. But myself, I'm a Warcraft 3 content creator. If you don't know me, my name is Saulapeman, I'm an ape. And let me tell you one thing. I watch Warcraft 3 every day since like 2 days on pro level. I'm casting it. I'm thinking about this a little bit. And I call myself like a soul chat GPT man, because if I see something weird, I know that it's, not what is used. So in this video, I will give you my feedback, what I think is good, what I think is bad. I will do some small suggestions from my end. It's late in the PTR cycle, so first thing first, I don't have like big suggestions, so small suggestions. But first thing first, I'm going to remind you what is going on. And of course, as a Warcraft 3 nerd, as a Warcraft 3 fallen gamer, I prepared this in the form of the Excel sheet. We are going to start with human, and what is interesting with me, you have those 4 columns here, and it's basically showing how important change is in every matchup, because we need to address every matchup. Rated changes from big nerf, small nerf, doesn't matter, small buff, big buff, and needs
layman's terms then. Yeah.
Testing, because if you buff witch doctors, you may say, oh, it's a big buff for orc, but then nobody uses witch doctors. And
this is only like 1.25 speed or 1.2 speed. Yeah, but that's how fast he's moving. Is look how blurred he is.
Anyway, so there is like the change doesn't matter, so maybe it needs testing, or maybe I'm not sure. So the first change is about riflemen. They are attacking a little bit slower. The overall nerf is 3% of the DPS, which is not that much. And if you think that the change is to address Pala Rifle, I have one answer for you. Pala Rifle players, they like to kite a lot. It means attack, go back, attack, go back. So it's a big nerf versus Orc, because you play only rifles, but it's like instead of 3%, you'll feel like 2% maybe. And I don't like this change overall. Why? Because it's also changing how you play versus Night Elf and Undead. Versus Undead, humans are mostly expanding, and then you don't make any rifles, right? If some...
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I mean, to be fair, I don't know too much in the pro scene whatsoever, because I don't particularly follow it, though of course it is always cool. But as you know, I do my custom games, but I know that, at least from my experience, riflemen were still pretty productive somewhat against Night Elf bears if they get enough damage upgrades and they can focus the bears down a little bit. Versus Undead, yes, definitely. If the Undead kind of lets you get away with it, if they're happy, they will probably be like level 5 by the time you got your Paladin to level 2. But yeah, either way, I'm not a big enthusiast of this nerf, because it's a nerf to human, and I don't think human, at least riflemen, need the nerf so much. They'll typically always go Archmage Footman anyway, majority of the games, so nerfing riflemen is just like, eh.
Players, and it happened on pro level, it decides to play one base, then yes, make a lot of rifles with Archmage and Mountain King and cast, and they try to push into the Undead expansion on the Undead base. If you nerf rifles, the humans will be like, okay, I have only one playable strategy versus Undead, I will expand forever, I will make 0 rifles. Similar versus Night Elf. If you want to try to play one base versus Night Elf, which is very rare, but happened in the Dolphin Super League recently by Fortitude, then you make a lot of rifles, you need to push with them, you can't really go back, kite that much because you are pushing. So human will say, okay, versus Night Elf, I'm not going to try different strategies. I will always play the same, right? So if you want to address rifle attack like that, I think you say, okay, I'm nerfing it versus Pala Rifle, but you're also killing making basically 2 other matchups versus Night Elf and Undead more boring, because there's only one dominating strategy. Now we have 2 changes to the master training time, and let me tell you one thing. For some reason, Blizzard wants to put all of the master training at 60 seconds. You may say, Soul, that's a nice idea. But wait a moment, Bear Master...
Soul, that's a nice idea. I personally don't think about it too deeply with the timings, because once again, I don't follow it, and that's hard to do. So unless you're following in the pro scene, perhaps there's something absolutely devastating about priests being able to research down to 60 instead of 75, because that means that extra 15 seconds means they can be in your base 15 seconds earlier, which would actually be devastating to Orc or Undead in particular. I don't know. But I think generally speaking, research time should be decreased because it's kind of a miserable experience having to wait a minute or 2 minutes for these slow ass things to kick in. I think it just makes the game pacing more enjoyable and fun because then you can actually get to use the thing you've researched rather than forget that you even researched it because it takes so long.
Training, Druid of the Claw is 35 seconds, and nerfing this would create a big problem because all of the night elf strategies are almost all of the night elf strategies are based about built around this 35 seconds timing. So I don't think in general, putting all of those master trainings at 60 seconds is a good idea because it ties your hands. Why exactly? You will have to make a lot of other changes to make it work. I don't know if it's tempting for everybody to play Warcraft because all of the master trainings have the same time. That being said, when do you see Inner Fire Priest and when you do see Polymorph from Sword Ladies? From Sword Ladies, never. So it doesn't matter. I saw so many human versus night elf games and human stays on tier 2 anyway. But
I don't know if they could ever do this, but wouldn't it be interesting if perhaps you could actually research priest master training and still be able to build priests whilst you're researching it? So it would be a separate thing that would be occurring whilst you're still able to build priests. It's just something that happens in the background of that building, but you can still actively build priests. Perhaps then you could increase the research time of things. It's because it stops you from being able to build units from that structure that slows everything down, in my opinion. Just a thought.
sometimes okay. If Night Elf is making Mountain Giants, it's sitting in one base. Maybe human will play this tier 3 and you have some inner fire, but you have rifles. So do you put this inner fire on rifles? You can't put it on breakers. Okay, you can put it on your heroes maybe, but you upgrade your priest, not even for the inner fire that much, but to have more mana and better stats. It's very rare to see, and this 15 seconds is not going to motivate human players to go tier 3 for inner fire priest. Priest is a very small buff and it doesn't matter. Last but not least, we have Water Elemental on level 2 change and it's a 1 base damage. And let me tell you, this is probably less than 1% nerf. So okay, Archmage on level 3 can be pretty oppressive. If you think that human is overperforming, that I'm not going to comment on that, the state of the balance. I'm just telling you that is again, this is a small nerf to 1 base place, because if you expand, you often fight, with Water Elemental just on level 1. You don't rely on this I creep level 3 Archmage really quickly. I'm taking, I'm going to attack my opponent base, and then I'm going to deal some damage with my Water Elemental level 2. So again, it's okay, then we'll just expand versus Undead anyway, we'll expand versus Night Elf anyway, in Human Minor doesn't matter, and versus Orc you play Pala Rifle mostly, so there is no Water Elementals there, but it's a small nerf. Do I like it? I don't know, it's whatever. Overall, I give changes for Human 1 by 10, it's not 0, because okay, there is maybe something with this master training, but let me tell you, on professional level, it's just so boring. We don't have anything new for human, and I don't like it. It needs to be a little bit exciting. Warcraft is not like chess that you want to have perfect balanced game for 2,000 years. I like the changes on Orc much more. Why? Well, let's start about Shaman and Witch Doctor Master Training. This is a little bit interesting because you never see Master Training on those units.
I think what we need to do is we need to get to a point where you can actually make mass Witch Doctors a viable strategy, is what Saulapeman is basically trying to get at here. He wants more enjoyable things to be able to do in the game, more gimmicky, fun things that you can pull off. Perhaps they still won't be as strong as the traditional Archmage Footman beginning and, Night Elf Demon Hunter Bears, which is the staple. But perhaps it's still more viable than basically being an impossibility right now.
And you don't see Witch Doctors anyway. Orc often stays tier 2. There is on tier 2. There is no this, tier 3 orcs that go for master upgrade. So that being said, okay, maybe in the Orc Mirror there'll be more Bloodlust, but remember that Orc Mirror is dominated by Taurens anyway. So it doesn't matter. You can buff those Witch Doctors like that and nobody will play them anyway. Is an exciting change because of that? I don't think so. Now you have Spirit Walker get the same treatment to the master training. And it's a small buff against Pala Rifle, right? So again, this is Pala Rifle got nerfed in human patch. Now Orc is getting buff versus Pala Rifle, but it's very little. And do I like this? I mean, Taurens are pretty dominating in Orc Mirror anyway. And do we see Master Training versus Pala Rifle? Okay, versus Undead versus Night Elf, you don't play it. So it's whatever. But the last change, healing solve duration from 45 to 40 seconds. Amount heal the total amount of healing is unchanged. I like this. Why? Because it's basically you heal faster, right? Because on pro level, you creep something with Blade Master, you are half HP missing, you put healing wave on top of you, and then you run to another camp, right? And with this change, you get a little bit more HP. I checked this with ChatGPT, that I ran the math, it's plus 20 HP, plus 30 HP per healing solve, with this extra efficiency, because...
Me and Grubby got some beef in regards to the healing self. But I think this item's OP, but there seems to be a lot of people that seem to think it's not enough, and orcs still need more healing. I know it's very contentious. I don't know if that's a proper word for this situation, but it's like the lower leagues, perhaps it's really OP, but at the top of the top, healing south just doesn't do quite enough for them. It's a tricky one to deal with. Yivy saying you feel like if healing ward wasn't as fragile, it would be valued more. I think healing ward would be. It's a really OP thing. That percentage healing over time. Obviously, versus creeps because they don't kill the healing ward. Versus players, it's insanely shite. So if you made it a tier 2 option instead of stasis ward, for example, and gave them something else for tier 3, because no one uses stasis ward's trap, would it be too strong to have healing at tier 2? Probably, because it means they could do the red creep counts a bit more easily, but then they'd be spending some resources in witch doctors, which they don't build anyway, so then those aren't as strong as building a shaman, for example, or whatnot. So there's some counterbalance there of trying to make healing ward more viable. Thought perhaps it could be like the Keep of the Grove when they used to change his ult so that he was invulnerable for the first 5 seconds. You put a healing ward down, it's invulnerable for the first 5 seconds, so it can't immediately be killed. And if you do kill a healing ward, aura, it's an aura, so auras in the game tend to last for about 3 seconds after you've... So say, for example, your Death Knight dies, you actually still have Unholy Aura for about approximately 3 seconds. And then it disappears. So it takes like 3 seconds for things to disappear anyway. So it'll give it like a maximum of 8 seconds or something that the healing wall could be up for. Do you see what I'm saying?
In professional conditions, you don't have this full duration of the healing solve, right? It's like at 40 seconds, you have like 20 seconds. So it's a small buff, and mostly to Blade Master first. So as we can see versus Nidev, I think it's a big buff because versus Nidev you have your shop early, and since the early game, you basically heal better, and you heal better very important unit, a hero, a Blade Master, right? For example, versus Human, you make your shop late. In Org Mirror, I mean, then Org Mirror will be more about Blade Masters, but that's okay. And versus Undead, again, Blade Master fast tag is quite popular. So it's basically a buff to Blade Master play. If you think it's like, oh, it's a late game buff to healing all of the Org units, no. In my opinion, it's going to be benefit one Burrow Tech players. Grabby like to play like that versus Undead, and or you can play just fast tag in general. And yes, I like because it's like a very subtle buff and it's helping the Blade Master. So why not? Overall, I'm excited about Blade Master. Overall, I'm a little bit excited about those casters, but I have very low expectations. So the review of is 4/10. Okay, now we have an Undead that, as you can see, there is a lot of changes, but they are grouped kinda. So ghouls, they have more damage, but they attack slower. Overall, is a net positive. It's around 3.5% DPS buff. And you know what? When ghouls were nerfed after the Super League Season 1, is because in the Super League we have 3 Undeads in top 4. So the final was Undead Mirror, and semi...
Could just be a coincidence when that sort of thing occurs, though. It's not necessarily a correlation. But ghoul attack cooldown, it says big buff, and I guess it is in comparison to the previous patch where it was nerfed, but their ghoul attack cooldown is technically still a nerf. So I feel like they're still worse off than they were like a patch or 2 ago, right? I'm not 100% sure on that.
Like this, you know, it was Ascension, doesn't matter. There was like 3 Undeads in top 4 players, and then Blizzard decided to nerf the ghouls by one damage to the base damage. And it, you know, Undeads, they use ghouls a lot, and now they want to kind of reverse it. Okay, so it's like because of this cooldown change, it's like basically the ghouls are not as good as they were, but they're like halfway there. And let me tell you, Human is getting nerfed with this like water elemental stuff. So Human versus Undead is going to look worse, and now Undead is getting buffed. You know, we need to make sure that Undead is not going to be over buffed, because if the patch goes like that, I think the big winner of this patch is going to be Undead again, because Undead is getting buffed, Human's getting nerfed, Org is like the Blade Master play will be better, and you know, we'll check the Night Elf. There is not that many changes for the Night Elf, but yes, that's my I'm a little bit worried about this, but yes, it's not over, it's not super big, but Undead can be very strong again. Banshee Master Training research time from 75 to 60 seconds. We don't see Banshees that much. There was this big sensation that you can possess webbed Gryphons, webbed...
Yeah, they're tier 5 units in direct strike, Banshees.
Flying units, right, with Banshee possession. And you know what? I thought it's going to break Undead versus Human, but Humans are quite good at positioning their armies. It's not that easy to possess Gryphons. So let me tell you, Undeads are not adding Banshees versus Human that often, and in other matchups sometimes they do it versus Night Elf, but it's usually in 2-base scenario, so this timing doesn't matter that much. I would like to see more Banshee possession, so okay, I like it, and it's not going to help versus Orc, and it's going to help in other matchups. And yes, the Ghoul buff is of course buff across all of it, because nobody open with Fiends, basically. You always open with Ghouls. Maybe in the Undead Mirror you play DK 10k feats, but it's very, very rare. You fight with ghouls, you creep with ghouls. So as you can see, buff, 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 buff. We have 3 changes to Wand of Negation. Wand of Negation is this new item that allows you to dispel. It's a single target dispel, so it's cheaper, but it has less charge. And now it's at cooldown. So the most popular use case of Wand of Negation is to evaporate water elementals. Is when Undead expands, Human expands, then does tier 2 fights, and Undead is rich, right, as Human, but Undead is spending a lot of gold on those Wand of Negations. When they see water elemental, just destroy water elemental, and now it's an address, right? So maybe Undead versus Human, even the ghouls are stronger, it's not going to be that bad. And the other use cases, Wand of Negations, is you use it to dispel, entangle. That's why Keeper is basically doesn't exist, right? Versus Undead, because as a first hero, and as a second hero as well, because you know.
Yeah, so it's 40 gold to dispel and entangle, basically. You could value that to a degree, but if you're shutting down his effectively only ability at that point, then you are negating him completely for that 40 gold charge. So yeah, it's such a tricky thing with Warcraft 3. Like, some creeps are so overpowered if you don't have Dispel. For example, Lightning Shield versus a human creep camp. You go to do a creep camp as human, you get Lightning Shield on one of your units or on the unit that you're trying to kill. So then you're taking like 5-10 damage per second or even quicker than that. It's like monumental. So if you had Dispel, it immediately removes that. But then it removes that whole threat. It's like there's not much of a sort of a delicate nuance of taping it down a little bit. It's completely gone, or it's too strong. So I don't know. Items like, I don't know what you can really do about that other than just change it so they don't even get Wand of Negation, because Undead seem to have a lot of items to start off with anyway. I don't feel like they really need Wand of Negation. I could be wrong, because they have to wait till Destroyers for any real proper dispel, but they almost always get Destroyers anyway, and they tech up pretty damn quickly, Undead, most of the time, so it's not that long till they can get Dispel effectively.
Tier 2 Undead can just dispel, entangle, the Treants as well, you know, so especially entangle, right? Because you think, like, you spend a little bit of gold and you can dispel 75 mana per charge of Keeper, because that's much how it costs to entangle things. So let me tell you one thing, guys. I like this change because Wand of Negation can be used to dispel another good things like rejuvenation. We see this more often. You can, like, if you have only 2 obsidian statues, you know, to heal you, you don't want to morph Destroyer immediately, and it's hard to, you know, aim with the Destroyer to dispel this first rejuvenation, the Demon Hunter. So in my opinion, Wand of Negation, that's pretty cool, ladies and gentlemen, to use versus in those cases. And if you buff ghouls, if you nerf human in general, then okay, nerf this 2-base situation for Undead as well, to not make Undead just dominate versus human.
He's selling the Wand of Negation more on me now, just simply because it's a quicker way to basically kill the Demon Hunter, is what he's saying.
Like those changes, and because it's cheaper now, and you don't care about cooldown if you dispel Hex or rejuvenation, it's going to motivate Undead players to use it more often versus other races than human, so I really like it. And this may be controversial, by the way, so that's why I put it in orange, because when I was doing some theory crafting with the Twitch chat told me that I'm crazy. This just, I should say nerf. But I think versus Orc and Night Elf, you don't care about cooldown, you don't care about, you know, 4 charges, 3 charges are enough. So I think it's a decent, interesting change. Last but not least, we have Frostworm build time from 65 to 60 seconds, and it only matters versus Night Elf on pro level. Nobody makes Frostworms on pro level, and versus Night Elf sometimes you make them. In general, I like Frostworms, more Frostworms, yes, but we also remember that this balance affects team modes, and in team modes there is much more Frostworms. I have an idea how to make Frostworms better without this, with a different change. So far,
it is actually funny. That is unironically a massive buff for 4 versus 4 RT for all the undeads that are straight tech and whatnot and go for mass frostworms. I don't know they've done that for chimeras yet. Typical bloody night elves straight teching to go mass chimeras. At least they'll get their army quicker, so you're not having to fight 3 versus 4.
I'm a little bit excited about this patch. I would give it 6/10 because there's a lot of different things and there's a lot of things to think about. But in general, my big worry is that this is going to be just too imba. And guys, there is not that much about the Night Elf. Not that much about the Night Elf. And there is not that much about the Night Elf, guys. We have 2 changes. Let's read the first one. Druid of the Talon Master Training Research to 60 seconds from 75. And guys, these actually open possibilities. If you do remember, we are an old school Warcraft player versus Orc Night Elves. They used to play this Druid of the Talon. So Talons with Demon Hunter, Beastmaster, and Tinker as a 3rd hero. And you know, these days it's a little bit weaker because of Blade Master Mirror Image and in general Talon changes. But actually, you play one base, you go tier 3, and you really wait for this Talon Master training. So this, from all of those master buffs, this one is the most important because it can help you to make Talons, and you sometimes place Talons in the Night of Mirror. So I like it. This, I like it. That makes a lot of sense instead of like this, giving it the same treatment to Sword Ladies, to Sorceress, because it actually may open new strategies that you would like to see. And last but not least, Glaive Thrower build time is decreased a little bit. It doesn't matter that much. You don't see Glaive Throwers on professional level. Maybe you are getting Tower Rush or something, but it's very rare to see, for example, in Night Elf Mirror seeing Potom Hands. Why? Because Hands were nerfed some time ago. They are no longer bouncing from building to repairing workers. And it's very hard to siege with Hands, even if you have Glaive Throwers behind. I mean,
I was purely thinking this is maybe just a change to help them defend versus potential tower rushes. It's just an extra 6 seconds that you get your Glaive Throw out to help deal with the momentum of them overwhelming you at the start if they do a tower rush.
I would say yes to this because we don't see that many Glaive Throwers, so okay, but it's not a big change. But I gave it 4/10 in general because, ladies and gentlemen, it's because I'm excited about Talons. So we covered all of the races. What about the neutral? Neutral, it means mercs. It means tavern heroes as well, and there is a lot of changes here. And the first 3 are combined, and they are motivated by Grabby. So we are addressing abolish magic damage from this Troll Shadow Priest. It's all about the Troll Shadow Priest. So the most popular Mercamp has this troll that can heal and dispel. And when you're an orc player, you hate every map where it's easy to get this guy because he can just dispel Wolves of Farseer. But before you say,
this is one of the biggest changes of the patch that people don't realize, is just how impactful that Shadow Priest is very often in the case. Having him pretty much fully negates like an enemy Farseer or an Archmage, or certainly helps a lot against an Archmage, because those water elementals are pretty tanky. So taking it down to 150 from 250 means that many more abolish magics you have to do, and you can't afford them that much on the Troll Priest, because you're only really supposed to get a few from him, and then he's completely out of mana.
Saul, Grabby was completely right to eliminate this Forest Troll Shadow Priest. Let me tell you, there are other matchups than orcs versus human, for example, and in general. So remember that in human versus undead and human versus night elf, we will both expand. They buy a lot of mercs, including Troll Shadow Priest. And I like that, on some maps you see mercs, and there are not that many maps when you see mercs, I like in general those mercs to see them. And I understand that can be oppressive versus orcs, so I will explain you what is happening here. Abolish magic, so this damage is nerfed from 250 to only 150. By the way, 250 is the HP of the wolf. I think that's too big of a change, right? Because then people say, okay, should I really buy it in like undead versus human? I want to dispel as undead the water elementals with this guy. As human, I want to dispel beetles of Criplord, and maybe for the gold price it's not worth it if the dispel is that small, and people will stop playing this priest. Probably not, because
I'm not very good on math, but is it like a 37.5% nerf? Is that what it is? Taking it from 250 to 150, which is pretty significant. Although it seems even more than that, to be honest with that, because it's almost halved, isn't it, really? If you think that's 250 to 125, that would be halved. So it's effectively halved. I guess 37.5% sounds about right then in that regards. So that's pretty significant for sure.
Okay, but I think it's just too much, and I'll address it later. Troll Shadow Priest stock delay from one.
If Glaive Thrower build time was 20 seconds, would they even be used? It really kind of depends on the momentum of the patch and the pacing, because there was a time, and I can't really remember specifically when that was. It's got to be a few years ago back now, maybe longer, because that's just how time works. But I remember Echo Isles being a heap spot for this particular strategy, where Night Elves, and even Night Elves versus Night Elves, so they were starting to basically make Keeper of the Grove and Priestess of the Moon, and they might have an archer or a huntress or two, but the rest of the units would be like glaive throwers. Like building one glaive thrower is odd, but this was a period of time where they were building like 4 or 5, 6 or whatever they could fit in. So you got to be careful, because you could go back to that stage. It's pretty funny, but they were packing it. I think they obviously got some sort of significant instant damage to their, like the way their damage worked, instead of it sort of having a delay or a projectile where it could potentially miss and do like half the damage. It was like, I think, changed so that it would basically hit for full impact on the target, which made a much bigger difference, and basically made them front load a lot more damage so they could squish units with a bit of micro.
120 to 180 seconds. And guys, this is genius. This is like the best idea that Grabby had, because At 2 minutes, so 120 seconds, it's when heroes are out from the altar, you know, the normal build. So basically, because of that, you creep the first camp, maybe the mer camp, or maybe just pull the mer camp to get access to the creeps without creeping it, and then you have the troll immediately. But if you change it to 3 minutes, so this extra 60 seconds, Farseer actually can do something harassing, and then you can stop human from buying the priest by you being there. So I think this is genius, and I love this change. Troll Shadow Priest stock replacement. Replacement, it means if you buy one priest, then how long you wait for another one. And this is the problem. If you make it too long, like people stop buying this priest in Undead versus Human and Human versus Night. So yes, that's a big buff for Orc, small buff for the Undead, and yes, a nerf for the big nerf for the Human, because Human works with Brilliance Aura with this. But it's in general, the question is, do you like to see those mercs? And I would say yes, but they are too strong versus Orc, yes, so we can tune down them a little.
Yeah,
okay, now
I agree with that one. I'm not too on board to change too much else. I don't know, the Rifleman's needed a nerf. You'd have to consider more with the pro players with that. But something like this is a bit more significant. Should the Shadow Priest be nerfed? Yeah, I think he's actually pretty insanely strong. There's a reason why he almost always gets picked. But should he be nerfed this much? No. I think with most nerfs, do something between 10 to 25% at best. And then see how the feedback goes, see how the game goes. If it still needs a further nerf, wait till another patch and then give it a stronger nerf after that. If you're already nerfing it by 10 to 25%, that's a lot more than it was currently, which was 0%. So always do a light touch when you're doing nerfs and buffs, generally speaking.
Change to Panda Breath of Fire this initial area, and there is a small buff to how the numbers are. And Don Dalore made this sketch, and it's basically it's combining the old Breath of Fire. So this big shape is a old Breath of Fire, in the middle this smaller shape is the new Breath of Fire, right? So it was the big.
I missed the old Breath of Fire.
And basically, this change is that I think that the current Breath of Fire will be a little bit thicker at the start, you know. So it's a very small change, but it's very annoying if you miss units. So it's going to be basically it's a very small buff. But I like this because if you use Breath of Fire from the close distance, you are not going to miss that much. We have a hero change, Beastmaster starting strength from 22 to 24. I like this. You don't see Beastmaster that often. And it's also small intensive for Night Elf with Talons, because Beastmaster is the second hero. Beastmaster, you know, it's +2 damage because he has a strength hero. He has more HP, more Reden. It's a small change. I like it.
That'll be +4 damage, actually. Unless I'm completely wrong on this. No, maybe not. But it also helped effectively give him a little bit more health and health regen, which does work for that old school strategy. He was talking about it earlier. Do you remember? They would just flood the board with basically stuff to protect the Talons. So the Talons would be at the back, and then you have Demon Hunter, Beastmaster, and Pocket Factory from the Goblin Tinker. Just a whole bunch of summons and just things just in the way. So if you wanted to get to the stuff at the back, you just had to go all the way around all of this nonsense that was just cluttering your space.
And ladies and gentlemen, it matters for Night Elf and Humans a little bit. Orc will never buy Beastmaster. The same will go with Undead. But yes, it can develop this Talon strategy. And, you know, maybe people try to play Beastmaster first, which is very interesting. So yes, I like it. And now we need to address elephant in the room. Dark Ranger life drain, ladies and gentlemen, and Dark Ranger in general, because, you know, Blizzard made this PTR just to address Dark Ranger and do some hot fixes, but then, you know, Grubby chipped in with some other changes, and the other content creators followed.
Damn you, Grubby! I think this is honestly a sensible change. The Dark Ranger definitely needed to be nerfed, but it's such a light nerf, in my opinion. But it's like a good nerf. It's like a... It feels more rewarding for the player to move outside of the Dark Ranger's life drain and then have it actually dissipate, rather than have to run 5 miles and still have it not dissipate. It's kind of crazy sometimes how far you have to run. It's oh, it's still going. I guess you have to click a few extra more pixels. That's more effort than I was expecting to have to put in just to get outside of this stupid thing, which I've already run 15 meters away from. So I think I agree with this. It's still dirt cheap at 35 mana. And the cast range, tether range business makes it much better for both players, I think, in regards to actual balance and counterplay.
And, you know, Dark Ranger is a pretty controversial subject, but guys, because we had this more time, there is more data from the Super League. And let me tell you, Dark Ranger strategy is not owning in the Super League. Dark Ranger is getting hard counter. The creator of Dark Ranger on pro level, Infi, is not playing Dark Ranger that much. That being said, I understand that on lower MMR or medium MMR where I play, Dark Ranger can be pretty oppressive. So let's check the changes. Dark Ranger life drain mana cost from 25 to 35. I think is the wrong approach to nerfing Dark Ranger. If you are tower rushing, your mana will be high anyway, right? And if you are creeping with Dark Ranger and you try to make like Dark Ranger Pit Lord work, which I love, ladies and gentlemen, then definitely you are nerfing not tower rush, but you are nerfing this like exotic strategy that like nobody plays on pro level, but it's so cool. Viewers on my stream, they love it when I make a fake Pit Lord. So I would basically keep it at 25 mana. It's not dominating on pro level. One thing I can understand, this life drain Tether range. Tether is like the leash that you put on enemy hero, and basically with this nerf, it means that enemy hero can just run away a little bit and get out of the life drain ability.
Good.
Why I say ability to be a little bit, because Dark Ranger life drain cast range is going to be buffed from 500 to 600, and you know this leash range from 800 to 700 nerf, but look at this. So if this goes live, the opponent hero, if you cast from the full distance, because you know on pro level they would like try to position Dark Ranger closer to the enemy hero, but on pro level they just on like lower level or mid level they just cast from the maximum distance, and opponent goes a little bit and it breaks, right? So I do agree that this leash range can be quite oppressive, and leash range doesn't help with creeping. So if I have one ask to Blizzard, guys, Dark Ranger is exotic, Dark Ranger is amazing. Mana is not addressing tower rushes. Tower rushes, they don't work well on pro level. And let me tell you one thing, those two other changes, okay, but leave it at 25 mana. That's what makes Dark Ranger fun. You can creep so much.
You can clearly tell Saulapeman loves playing Dark Ranger so much. I feel like this is one of the lightest ways you could nerf her, and it's also one of the most sensible ways. So it's like such a milquetoast way of dealing with her. It's nothing extreme. She's still basically completely fine. It doesn't make her like completely unplayable now, but each to their own.
It feels so good. And if you don't believe me because I'm biased, listen to Back to Warcraft. This guy is casting Warcraft for like 15 years, so he knows what he's talking about.
Infi gets destroyed by life. The Dark Ranger era on pro level seems over, seems figured out. Mountain King looked a lot.
Well, there's your problem, right? What do you have at the top left? It's a Demon Hunter. Perhaps heroes like the Dark Ranger are absolutely fine. It's just some heroes are a little bit too good that people don't pick anything other than them. Such as the Demon Hunter. Captain Boring. If you maybe make it so that some heroes like the Demon Hunter aren't quite so effective at what it is that they do, that the players actually have more of an inspiration to, I don't know, choose another hero other than the Demon Hunter 85% of the time in all matches, then maybe that would help.
Better. And while Night Elves almost looked hopeless for a long time against Mass Air, against tower pushes with this Dark Ranger, they're dominating now almost. Since Moon introduced the world to Demon Hunter first and not playing Warden first anymore, the Night Elf stonks against human through the roof.
Very well said, Neo, and he was talking about results from the Super League. So Infi versus Lai. Look at this. When he played Dark Ranger first, 2
Fucking
loses.
hell.
When he played M.
That's what I'm talking about again. Demon Hunter, Demon Hunter, Demon Hunter, Demon Hunter. What second hero should I get? Should I get Pando? That was normally what you used to get quite often with Naga. Now I just get Naga. Naga. Oh, it's the same bloody thing over and over.
Okay, 1 win, 1 lose. Afterwards, Infi played versus Moon. The series ended 3-2 for Moon, but again, Infi decided to not play Dark Ranger.
I mean, at least Moon's got some inspiration to try something slightly different. Albeit in 5 of the games, 4 Demon Hunters appear, but at least he tried a little bit harder.
And this is Super League when it matters most. Of course, Dark Ranger was exotic in Human Mirror. Nobody plays Dark Ranger in Human Mirror. Infi versus Sok. It's not happening that we see some Dark Ranger there.
And Human Mirror absolutely has the same issue. I mean, all the races kind of have this issue, right? But Human Archmage, because the other heroes aren't very particularly effective at actually, like, creeping on specific maps, Mountain King can be viable because with enough militia and such, and the creep camps being close enough, you can pump him up to level 3, and then he becomes a lot more accessible. Getting to level 3 is pretty much like the big power step for most if you don't play Warcraft 3 or if you're new to Warcraft 3, get your hero to level 3, pick a level 2 version of your ability, level 2 Water Elemental, level 2 Feral Spirit, level 2 whatever. It's going to make a big difference between your level 1 and your level 2. There's a reason why getting to level 3 is so important.
Nobody plays Dark Ranger in Human Mirror, Infi versus Sock. It's not happening that we see some Dark Ranger there. Versus Undead, yes, sometimes we see Dark Ranger, but it's only to counter Lich first opener, and the meta in Undead versus Human is, of course, Archmage versus Criplord. So, like, keeping Dark Ranger, playable, it means that we can see sometimes Tavern Hero versus Undead, and the King of Undead of Humans, Fortitude, never basically plays Tavern Heroes. Guys, those are the numbers, and if you want to make Dark Ranger less oppressive, keep those two changes on the bottom about the range. But the mana cost needs to stay 25 to keep Dark Ranger interesting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the controversial part, my changes. So how I would like to see this PTR look like in the final version. I would reverse the nerf to rifles in order to keep, a one base playable versus Night Elf and Undead. And if you want to nerf Pala Rifle, nerf long rifles research time. Increase from 30 to 45 seconds. So in Pala Rifle versus Orc, usually Orc is pressuring, even with Naga second. And when the Blood Mage is out, when Long Rifle range is out, then, it's much better to even chase the Orc in the middle of the map. If you make this longer, this upgrade going up, then it's going to be worse for Pala Rifle players to immediately push back. You can make it even 60 seconds. 45 seconds is, I think, a good thing to test. Another change that I would make is like from these exotic, interesting changes. If you care about oppressive strategies, like, Dark Ranger is so oppressive. What about all of those orcs and other races that just use Mass Tower? Cloud is an ability of Dragonhawk Raiders that nobody uses basically, and put it on tier 2. If somebody's making Mass Towers versus you, that never happens on pro level, by the way, then you can use it on tier 2. Like it will be interesting to see some Dragonhawks with this Cloud upgrade, Cloud disabled towers basically for some time, and it's a channeling spell, so it's easy to play around it. This is quality of life for humans, huh? And just a random change. Again, I'm not going big with changes. Nobody's buying Mechanical Critter. Mechanical Critter is super slow. People that watch Grabby, they kill all of the critters on the map out of habit. But Mechanical Critter range of vision, give Mechanical Critter Sentry Ward vision, 1200. Nobody's using it, so maybe it will motivate some people to actually buy it.
I agree with both of these changes. I feel like they're not going to have too much impact on the game and anything. They might make it so that people might actually potentially consider buying these things once in their lives. But yeah, Cloud being versus Orc, that would be a big nerf to Orc with their fast tech in tier 2 reinforced defenses, which can be absolutely a nightmare to deal with. So some sort of way to counterplay it would be absolutely on board. And Orc, when they get tier 2, they have Ensnare. They typically get Raiders. So they do actually have an answer to Dragonhawk Riders trying to like cloud their base. So it's not like they're super hard countered by Cloud being tier 2 that I can think of. So I would be on board with that change completely. And a Mechanical Critter, why not? I don't think people are going to still build them because of this change, but I certainly wouldn't hurt.
And you may say Soul is overbuffed. Put it like that and see if pro players will buy it. I don't think so, but it would be funny to see this critter like seeing like everything wherever it is. With Orc, I would keep all of the changes and I would add something on top of it. So, Kodo Beast Devour ability now deals 10 damage per second instead of 5. So it basically you digest faster, and it address it's the most important versus Night Elf. And as Grabius often saying, that Night Elves are very strong, but to the contrary, now like
that's a difficult one to do. I think versus creeps, you could double the amount of time. So, say for example, it does 5 damage. Perhaps you could triple it or quadruple it versus creeps to devour creeps quicker, because it's not very, very viable right now to devour a creep, right, as an Orc player. Perhaps it would end up being too strong that way, so you'd have to sort of get the balance right. But as for devouring an enemy unit, I feel like if you devour an abomination, it could take a really long time, but that's kind of the counter for you basically getting rid of a 4-food unit that costs 240 gold or whatever. So I don't think you should necessarily change Kodo Beast Devour damage. It's only versus creeps, I think. You can make it more viable.
Ladies and gentlemen, Night Elf versus Orc is not looking good in Super League because Lyn came back from his retirement, Lyn, the king of Orcs, and he's winning versus everybody. But you still think that Orc needs more buffs? I would address Orc versus Night Elf with giving Kodo Beasts like more damage per second when they are digesting, and maybe motivate people to open with a Kodo instead of a Raider, It's not a big change. And now
I think the Witch Doctors, the Stasis Ward and Healing Ward, like in 4 versus 4 RT and in 3 for all, the way they're balanced is perfectly fine. if anything, quite strong in some cases, because those scenarios allow you to sort of get those units and keep onto them and not be so pressured like you would be in 1v1 to always be moving, always be doing something. But in 1v1, it feels like they just need to be completely rewired. So it's such a difficult thing to do. Do you just leave the Witch Doctor as it is, or do you try to balance and change it completely, which could completely break things? It's a tough one.
Now I would make Witch Doctors a little bit better. So I'm basically buffing by a lot because it's a radius. It's like ordering a pizza. If you order a pizza with bigger radius, it's going to be much bigger pizza. So Stasis Trap, their adept ability, because as I mentioned, Witch Doctors on level 1, they suck, without any upgrades. And on this level 2, the Sentry or the Stasis Trap is so-so. So I would buff it a little bit. So, this detection radius, detonation radius, I would just buff it. Not by much, but I think that it's something interesting to make Witch Doctors work a little bit better. And it can be too strong. Needs testing is just an idea to make them interesting. For the Undeads, who am I to, again, I'm not going to, say, oh, Undeads, they need to, not have their ghoul buffs. Again, I'm afraid Undead is going to be the winner of this patch again, but whatever. But yes, what I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is instead of making Frostworm build time faster, I would make Boneyard build time faster, reduced, and by even 20 seconds, and you are not going to, destroy 4v4, because in 4v4, people make a lot of Frostworms. In 1v1, people make 1-2 Frostworms, that's much. So you don't, so basically, faster Boneyard is pretty good in my opinion. Again, we don't see Necromancers at all, and you play Necromancers on one base, then you never have gold. So I would, the idea that they have to make cheaper Necromancers, but a little bit by 10. We don't want to have Necromancers in every game. And Dread,
I think this is completely fair.
Lord is an interesting hero. We don't see Dreadnought as the third hero that often. We don't see Dreadnought as the first hero. People are excited about Dreadnought. Give him the same treatment as you give to Beastmaster. So
we need to get to a point where we can just drastically change the Dreadlord and turn him into, I wouldn't say a Demon Hunter, more like a Blade Master. He needs to be that kind of overpowered carry hero. And Human don't have it as well. I always wanted Human to have Admiral Proudmoore as like an agility sword swinging character. So, Dreadlord, it's time for you to turn into an agility hero.
+2 damage and +2 main stat, basically. About the Night Elves, again, I'm a simple man. I see a unit very rarely that I want to buff this unit a little bit. So Fairy Dragons, I think they have problem with survivability, because if you play them versus humans have some rifles, and they die pretty quickly. Later, of course, flying machines. So I would give them bonus armor, more bonus armor when they're in this anti-caster big glowing ball. And the same with Frostworms, I would make Chimera Roost build time reduced from 80 to 60 seconds. And Chimeras, with all due respect, they suck, When I see Chimeras in professional level, they usually disappoint, so we are not going to touch any Chimeras, stats, just how quick you can access to your first Chimera. Yes, to address the Troll Priest, I'm keeping 2 grabby changes. Maybe you can, maybe I will actually change it.
Thank you for the sub there, Evan.
From 250 to, let's say, 215. So this dispel, if you can really want to nerf it to not one-shot the wolf, make it 215. So
215 sounds odd. Does 220 sound better? Otherwise, 200 is more flat.
Keep it in Undead versus Human. The stock delay is perfect. This is perfect. I love it. I'll just remove this replenishment. So this gives me hope that in Human versus Night Elf and Human versus Undead will still see some mercs. It's not going to be very repetitive. And yes, a Breath of Fire I would keep, but yes, Dark Ranger, I would basically remove this change with mana cost, and I would keep 2 others. And ladies and gentlemen, there are 3 things that I would...
How could it be that bad, though? 25 mana to 35 mana. It's so insignificant.
I'd like you to remember, because I think they're very cool.
You might try to catch me back where I say about you shouldn't have nerfs much more than 25%, and you could say, oh, 25 to 35 mana. Well, actually, that's at least a 30% nerf or something like that. Yeah, but with this one, it's so slow. It used to be 50, by the way. It used to be 50 mana. And 50 mana was pretty cheap back then, but it was expensive enough that you wouldn't be able to spam the thing. When it went down to 25, it was pretty much, you could just... Because remember, when you cast this thing, assuming that you get to channel it for up to 8 seconds, even 5 seconds, assuming you get at least 5 seconds, you're regenerating mana whilst you're draining life. It's not like you cut off your mana regeneration. So you've already got 10 mana back by the time you've cast the spell or whatnot. So really, it's only costing 15 mana and stuff like that. So you've got to take that thing into account.
This Master got +2 strength, Dreadlord got +2 strength, give it to the Pit Lord. You never see Pit Lord. Pit Lord is amazing, +2 strength, better second hero. Interesting. And
Never change the Pit Lord cleaving attack. Keep it as high as possible. He's such a fun hero. Never change. I 100% disagree with this. Even if it's a 1% nerf, I 100% disagree with this. Pit Lord needs to be the fun, gimmicky guy with that giant, juicy cleave. It's so fun to watch.
Also, you know, people they like to build big pit lords, and I understand that pit lord level 5 can be crazy. So that's why this pit lord cleaving attack splash damage I would change from 40, 65 to 90, and I would basically move 5%. So I would give him 5% more splash damage on level 1.
No, I completely disagree with that. I miss the days where I think Soul wants more fun sort of days, right? Remember when humans had their orb of fire changed to be plus 10 damage? Yeah. Playing the Pit Lord with 5 or so orbs with plus 10, so they have plus 50 damage. That was good. That was fun. We need more stuff like that, more fun, gimmicky things. Would pro players still do that? They're not going to do that every game. They're still going to go bloody Demon Hunter. They're still going to go Death Knight. They're still going to go Archmage. But it actually made it so you could do that stuff, and it would actually be pretty impactful. And heck, it could be a little bit overpowered, but that's the kind of the fun of games, isn't it? It's like whenever you're playing a MOBA or something, you want to kind of get that super overpowered carry hero, but you have to build into it. You have to make it work. You have to earn it.
5% less on the level 5, and in the middle level 3 I would keep it the same. That would make interesting to make Pit Lord, you know, as a second hero. You never see Pit Lord in pro games. Plus 2 strength is not going to kill anybody, and this cleave is like basically reducing level 5 impact and making Pit Lord easier to creep on level 1. And I would give also plus 2 strength to Trinker. What? No, why not give the Knight of this? Like, oh my god, we can make Beastmaster plus 2 strength, Tinker plus 2 strength, and also my Talons are going to be up earlier on Master ability. The Knights are going to be excited.
I think one of the best ways to make Tinker more viable is to simply make an alteration to his Pocket Factory. It would be simply like, it costs like, let's just say it costs 125 mana. It might be 125 mana, 150 mana. I'm pretty sure it's 125. And it, you know, it's slow. It takes 30 seconds or whatever. Why don't you just reduce the mana cost, but just also reduce the power of the ability itself? But obviously it's cooldown, so it's got a quicker cooldown. So you're making it more sort of viable, but not super overpowered in its own right. So you can pop down a few of them if you need to, or if you're creeping quickly, you don't have a big 15-second gap before you can put another Pocket Factory down. You just put a lesser version down. I think I prefer stuff like that where there's like lesser versions of it, but they're cheaper and they've got quicker cooldowns. You just get to play the ability more. I don't like having long cooldowns. Ever played Emphos? Problem with Emphos is your ability cooldown's like 2 minutes long in that game. It's like miserable.
About Talons. So yes, guys, that's about it, and I don't have hotline to Blizzard, but again, it's going to be quite interesting if any of those changes will be addressed by Blizzard. So guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Warcraft 3, in my opinion, should be less than chess, so like giga, super perfectly balanced, even if we are going to play only one strategy, you know, per race. In my opinion, it should be a lot of strategies open, and of course, meta on pro level is important, but you know, why to kill a fun strategy like Dark Ranger, for example? Let me know what you think in the comments, and yes, I'm glad that I made this video. It's probably not that good, but it's something. I'm going to link a post in the description to the Blizzard forum with my feedback, and guys, yes, that was Saulapeman for Warcraft 3 PTR. Thank you for watching, like, subscribe, comment for more, and see you in the next one. Bye!
There you go. Check out Saulapeman. He streams on Twitch as well as obviously he's doing his YouTube business over here. Check the links in the video description below. Good video. I enjoyed it. Definitely some stuff to take on board with it. I think I agree with most of it, except for the Dark Ranger stuff. You know, you can't let it get away with too much. Otherwise you'll get an ego.